Theresa May prepares to make the case for her Brexit deal to Parliament at the opening of 5 crucial days of debate.
Before that, the government faces potential embarrassment if MPs found it broke rules by refusing to publish its full Brexit legal advice.
What does the Brexit debate look like 400 miles away from Westminster? I'm here in Stirling to find out how people are following developments.
A scathing report on the rail industry's rollout of new timetables in May. MPs say Transport Secretary Chris Grayling should have done more to prevent the chaos.
The body of former US President George H.W. Bush arrives in Washington to lie in state on Capitol Hill.
It was an historic night in Paris where Luka Modric won the men's Ballon d'Or, ending a decade of domination from Ronaldo and Messi, and the very first women's award went to Ada Hegerberg, sparking a social media storm.
Good morning. It's a cold and frosty start to the day with a widespread frost and some patchy mist and fog. For many of us, though, it will start off in a sunny note. However, we've got rain coming in from the southwest later. I'll have more in 15 minutes.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 4th of December. Our top story is that Theresa May will make the case for her Brexit withdrawal deal to Parliament later, opening a 5-day debate on the issue.
First, though, the government is facing potential embarrassment if it's found to have broken the rules by not publishing its Brexit legal advice. Our political correspondent Ian Watson can explain.
Theresa May has been touring the country and the TV studios trying to sell her Brexit deal. But today she'll face the most demanding audience of all, her fellow politicians. But just before she begins the 5 days of debate on her deal, MPs will discuss whether her ministers are in contempt for failing to publish the legal advice which Parliament demanded last month. Last night, the Commons Speaker granted an emergency debate to be held around lunchtime today.
I have considered the matter carefully, and I am satisfied that there is an arguable case that a contempt has been committed.
If Theresa May is defeated and government ministers are found in contempt, this is likely to be seen more as a distraction than a disaster. MPs would have to consider what action to take. The government's accusing opposition politicians of playing politics.
I think it's a complete diversion from what the public are expecting to hear. We're going to have 5 days of important debate about the merits of Brexit, the withdrawal agreement. Let's get on with that and stop messing about with process.
What is significant is that one of the opposition parties who want to see the legal advice is none other than Northern Ireland's DUP, and their MPs usually prop up the Prime Minister's minority government. So this could be the shape of things to come. The really big vote isn't today, it's next week when MPs decide whether to back the Brexit deal. But today's debate may give a clue to the scale of opposition that the Prime Minister is likely to face. Ian Watson, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's talk to our political correspondent Nick Eardley, who's in Westminster for us this morning. So, it's the start of the 5 days, what we've been waiting for, culminating in that vote. What do you reckon, Nick?
It's going to be a busy few days. Theresa May has a huge challenge on her hands to get this through. But even before she can get to selling this pitch to MPs once again, she faces the wrath potentially of opposition parties who are furious over the fact that they're not at the moment going to be making that decision based on the full legal advice the government has. You heard in Ian's report there that they will try and force that contempt of Parliament vote later on. Ministers are really reluctant to publish the full legal advice because they say quite simply it needs to remain confidential. So there is a real prospect that for the first time in living memory the government itself could be held in contempt of Parliament. But all of that is just, it's a precursor, it's a curtain raiser to that even bigger debate on whether or not Parliament endorses Theresa May's Brexit vision. And as we've seen over the last few weeks, she faces massive opposition from every side on it, from some who think it leaves us too close to the European Union, tied to its rules, to others who think it takes us too far away. Theresa May will argue this morning that it sets us on course for a better future outside the European Union, but she faces massive struggles to win over enough MPs to get it through.
Nick, thanks very much. Time now is 5 minutes past 7. You are watching
Welcome
Breakfast.
back.
Welcome back. We've had some technical problems, we understand,
yes,
on BBC One. We were off air on BBC One.
Did
for
you
some
pull the
technical
plug
problems.
out?
Just accidentally clipped the wire. I'm so sorry. My fault. All my fault, as usual. Anyway, we're back with you, so apologies for those technical problems. The time now, 5 minutes past 7. You're watching Breakfast with Dan and Naga.
Let's move on with some other news for you this morning. The Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, should take some responsibility for the chaos around the introduction of new rail timetables earlier this year. This is according to a report by MPs. Mr Grayling has apologised for the disruption faced by hundreds of thousands of passengers on Northern and Govia Thameslink routes in May, but has said he was given reassurance by train company bosses only days before. Well, the Transport Select Committee says genuine change is now needed to restore trust in the railways.
More than 4,000 children in England with special educational needs and disabilities were not given the support they needed at school last year, according to the Ofsted Chief Inspector.
The regulator's annual report, which is published today, describes the failure as a national scandal. The Department for Education says it's working to improve standards with a new inspection framework. Navtej Johal has more.
That's nice. That's what I would wear in the summer. Do you like the shoes?
10-year-old Sienna has been out of school for over a year. She has autism, and her mum Jane says she was told by her school that it couldn't meet her needs. She says the system has let her down.
It's a muddle. I would actually say shambles. I've used that quite a few times. Nobody seems to know what they're doing. It's easy for all these professionals making these decisions. They can go home at night and sleep. But we're left in limbo, and that's what it feels like, limbo.
Ofsted's annual report says that last year in England, more than 4,000 children like Sienna, with official education, health and care plans setting out their needs, received no support at all. That's 5 times more than in 2010. It's described the situation as a scandal. It also says those children are often being excluded rather than receiving help.
We've seen a pattern of sort of increasing rates of exclusion for children with special needs. It looks as though that it's even more becoming even more difficult for them to do well in mainstream school and to carry on through to life post 16.
The government says councils will receive almost £6 billion for special needs this academic year, a rise of £5 billion from 2013. But as this march by head teachers showed earlier this year, many schools are struggling to fund the huge increases in demand for support, a struggle which looks set to continue. Navtej Johal, BBC News.
I think lots of families will be concerned about the level of spending, particularly for those with special educational needs. Amanda Spillman is the Chief Inspector of Ofsted. You saw her there. We're going to be talking to her around 8:10. So if you have any thoughts on that, please do get in touch, get your questions in, and we'll try to get them to her.
Elsewhere this morning, the family of a British woman who vanished from outside a bar in Tenerife have arrived there to help in the search for her. 28-year-old Amy Gerard, originally from Cleethorpes, was last seen outside an Irish bar called Molly Malone's, and that was in Puerto de la Cruz in the early hours of Friday morning. Spanish police have released a poster, and that is appealing for information about Ms Gerard.
Anti-government protesters in France have pulled out of a meeting today with their Prime Minister after allegedly receiving death threats from extremists. The group, known as the Yellow Vest Movement, began demonstrating against fuel taxes last month, but protests were hijacked by hardliners from the far right and left, and on Saturday they led to serious violence in Paris. Now members of the group say they're being warned not to enter negotiations with the government.
The body of President George Bush Sr. is lying in state in Washington. This follows a ceremony which was attended by the Bush family and senior political figures.
Now there'll be a state funeral for the former US President on Wednesday. From Washington, Rajini Vaidyanathan sent this report.
For George H.W. Bush, it was the final journey to Washington, D.C., a city to which he devoted much of his life. With his son, America's 43rd President George W. Bush, watching on, the casket of the country's 41st was carried up the steps of the US Capitol building, accompanied by a 21-gun salute. President Trump, who Mr. Bush reportedly didn't vote for, paid his respects with his wife Melania. Republicans and Democrats and politicians past and present lined up to pay tribute.
In all of his 94 years, President Bush never lost his love of adventure. And he never failed to answer the call to serve his country.
President George H.W. Bush's casket will lie in state here at the US Capitol building in Washington until Wednesday morning, giving members of the public their chance to say a final goodbye. Then it will move to Washington's National Cathedral, where America's 41st president will be afforded a full state funeral. Regina Vaidyanathan, BBC News, Washington.
Drones and unmanned vehicles are being included in the biggest exercise of military robots in British history. It's currently underway on Salisbury Plain. Guns on robots are also being tested by the British Army for the first time as part of the exercise, which is examining ways to automate warfare.
It could be fascinating to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't go wrong.
Yeah. 11 minutes past 7 is the time. Carol's going to have the all-important weather for us in just a few minutes. But of course, for many commuters, it's been a very frustrating year, particularly if you're a rail passenger. And now a report by MPs has strongly criticised train operators and the government for not doing more to prevent massive disruption caused by the introduction of a new timetable.
It was at its worst in May, wasn't it, where more than 300 journeys a day were cancelled, affecting passengers mainly on Northern and Thameslink services. Disruptions continued throughout the autumn. In October, more than 25% of Northern Rail services were either late or cancelled.
Passengers on TransPennine Express have experienced a rough ride too, with 30% of services delayed or in October.
We're joined now from our London newsroom by Robert Nesbitt from the Rail Delivery Group, which represents the train operators in Britain. Good morning to you, Mr Nesbitt. Thank you very much for coming on and facing some of these questions. I mean, I'm sure you've read it. It's a pretty scathing report. Why were things allowed to get to this level? Why were they so bad?
Well, when you take this report, which we as an industry welcome, it's an important contribution to the conversation at the moment, but put it next to the review that's also been carried out by the rail regulator and our own internal reviews about what went wrong in May, and we accept that a lot of things went wrong, they're all pretty much saying the same thing, and that's that there is systemic problems within the industry, that there isn't one person to blame, but we need to look at the plumbing of the industry, how the architecture is working, because clearly it's not working for passengers. So we welcome this government review that's going to be carrying on for about a year, but we know that passengers can't wait for the results of that review, that we as an industry have to act to make sure that what happened in May doesn't happen again. And we've got another timetable just around the corner. The December timetable is coming up on Sunday, and we've taken a lot of measures to protect passengers from what went wrong in May.
Well, if the system wasn't working, you said there's problems with the plumbing, why was there such an ambitious timetable change attempted then in May? Surely there was somebody somewhere saying, do you know what, I'm not sure this is going to work.
And clearly these reports are saying that that system didn't work, that those fail-safes didn't kick in. So what we have done this time round is there's an assurance team, a timetable assurance team, which is effectively run by Network Rail, which runs the tracks in this country, but challenging the train operating companies, saying, look, we're ready on this bit, are you really ready? Having that conversation to make sure that we're not over-ambitious, which is pretty much what happened in May. And already it's had an effect. We've looked at the December timetable coming up, and certain services that we had promised passengers we've taken out of this timetable, because we know that the most important thing is to stabilise the system, because the shockwaves of what happened in May are still being felt by passengers, and for that of course we apologise, but rather than just me sitting here saying sorry, we've actually got to do something about it. And that's why this December we hope, but there are always issues or teething problems with timetables, but we hope that we have, to use a fairly unpleasant word, de-risked it, taken out those risks to try to prioritise stability, because we can't let what happened this summer to passengers happen again.
Doing something would be compensation. That's been suggested by the report. What's happening with regards to that?
Well, for the two areas that were most affected in May, both for Northern passengers and those on Thameslink as well, there have been compensation packages, not just the delay repay for the daily journeys, but also for those regular travellers, up to a month off. So that's the equivalent for some of those regular travellers of about 8% off the money they pay for their rail fares. And of course, you know, that isn't going to compensate people for, you know, missed appointments, missed scheduling at work. We know that, but it will go some way to say that we as an industry know that we didn't match up to the expectations in May, and we know that there are consequences for us, financial consequences for us, if things go wrong. So 67,000 season ticket holders down in the Thameslink area have already had their compensation claims processed, and that process is carrying on till the end of January now. So anybody who's a season ticket holder in the Thameslink area should contact Thameslink, GTR, to make sure that their claim is being processed.
Do you have a rail season ticket yourself?
I don't have a season ticket, no, but I am a regular train traveller.
But you must be aware then that people are paying, and many of our viewers this morning are paying thousands of pounds for this service, and yet they cannot rely on those services to either get them to work or wherever they need to be. You talked about this timetable change that comes in again this weekend. Can you give any guarantees this morning? I know you put these fail-safes in. Are there guarantees, though, that it's not going to be the carnage that many people saw in May?
I will guarantee that we are doing our best to try to limit their exposure to potential delays, but I can't rule out, especially when we go into the winter season, that there may be seasonal things that affect people's journey. So I can't make that cast iron guarantee. What I can say is that we know what went wrong in May went wrong. We know that thousands of people were severely inconvenienced. See, we don't operate in a vacuum here, in the rail industry. Many of us are regular train travellers ourselves, and we felt the same pain that passengers were feeling as well. We know it went wrong, and we're now looking at how best to manage that, not just now by setting up this assurance team and by putting extra money into the timetabling area of Network Rail, but also looking at the systemic issues with the train industry. We welcome the rail review. We've launched our own consultation into fares to see how they are structured, to see how they can work better for passengers, and this is all part of our long-term plan to improve and change, because we know that this summer we have lost the trust of thousands of our customers. We know that, and we are doing our best to make sure that this timetable that comes into force on Sunday will do its best for those passengers and inject that investment that we know the railway needs. It's hugely congested, often Victorian infrastructure. We're trying to put those extra services on to make passengers get the service that they have asked for, and it was trying to do that things went wrong in May. So the ambition is right, but the implementation in May clearly was wrong.
Right, well, we shall see over the weekend what happens, and maybe we'll speak to you again next week. Robert Nisbet, thank you very much for coming on Breakfast this morning.
17 minutes past 7 is the time. Let's talk to Carol, find out what commuters this morning might be facing in terms of weather. Morning, Carol.
Good morning, all. Well, it's a cold start to the day, colder than it was yesterday. So if you are just stepping out, wrap up warmly. Temperatures are widely below freezing. So widespread frost. We've got some patchy mist and fog as well. But for many, when the sun gets up, we're looking at a fair bit of sunshine. But there is the risk of ice and untreated surfaces across parts of Scotland. Now, we do have this ridge of high pressure across us. The weather front out towards the west is producing some showers. About 250 metres. We could also see the odd shower across northwest England. But through the day, the cloud will start to build in from the southwest, turning the sunshine hazy. And then here comes the rain, coming in across the Isles of Scilly into Cornwall, just getting in to the Channel Islands by round about mid-afternoon. Now, as we head on through the evening and overnight, that band of rain continues its journey, moving northwards and eastwards, always throwing more cloud ahead of it as it does so. There'll be some hill fog, some freezing fog across Scotland, and once again, the risk of ice on untreated surfaces where, of course, it's been damp. And you can see where it's going to be particularly cold, as indicated by the blue hues on the chart. Not as cold elsewhere. That's under clear skies, so any patchy fog that forms in Scotland or Northern England will be freezing fog. But it is going to be a wet night for Northern Ireland, much of England and also Wales. And through the course of tomorrow, that continues to edge northwards. We've actually got two weather fronts. Here's the first one, here's the second one. In between, it will dry up a touch, but there will still be some drizzle. And through the day, we'll see some snow across the North Pennines, getting into the southern uplands, and then eventually into the central highlands. Now here, it still is going to be cold, with temperatures easily down to about 3 or 5 Celsius as your maximum temperature, but not across the rest of the UK. How mild for the time of year it is going to be. Now, through Thursday, still quite a breezy day, windy with exposure. We've got weather fronts crossing us, introducing some rain. But it's this system coming in from the west that's going to bring in some wilder weather during the course of Friday. Just looking at the isobars tells you that. So what you can expect on Thursday, first of all, in this column here, is some rain, followed by some showers breezy but windy with exposure in the west. And then on Friday, as that deep area of low pressure crosses us, it's going to bring in some heavier outbreaks of rain, moving from the west to the east. We'll have that also across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will fall as snow on the hills. And it's going to be windy wherever you are, but especially so across western Scotland, where we could have gusts 70 miles an hour, possibly more. And in areas adjacent to the Irish Sea coastline here too, it's also going to be windy. At the moment, the Met Office doesn't have any weather warnings out, but that may change, and if it does, we'll keep you posted right here. Nugget and Dan.
Doesn't mean that people still shouldn't take care with, if you're looking at gusts of 70 miles per hour, certainly.
Totally, they're damaging gusts. Absolutely.
All right, Carol, thanks very much. We'll see you later.
Let's have a little look at some of the front pages for you this morning at 21 minutes past 7. We're going to start with The Guardian. They're saying Cabinet Ministers could miss next week's vote on the Brexit deal if they found to have broken rules for not publishing the full legal advice about the deal. And Michelle Obama is the main picture there on the front page. The former First Lady was in London yesterday and suffers from imposter syndrome.
Gosh, it actually makes me feel better knowing that if she suffers it, then we can feel OK. The Times leads on a damning report by MPs which suggests that the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, should accept responsibility for the meltdown of rail services this summer. We're just talking, of course, to Richard Nesbitt this morning from the, what's the company? Rail Delivery Group. I always find it's not the most catchy of names, is it? Talking about the, yeah, they do. Talking about the disruption we've seen, especially in May, lots of people experiencing disruption. Picture there, Alex Younger, the boss of MI6, who gave a speech at his old university yesterday, St Andrews, encouraging younger people to think about secret services.
And it's a rail hike in January as well, and a price hike again, isn't it? And finally, Mirror this morning, Sir David Attenborough saying time is running out to save our planet. Yesterday, the broadcaster gave a speech about the environment at the United Nations-sponsored summit in Poland. He was representing what they called the People's Seat.
This week on Breakfast, we've been taking a look at the issue of care in the UK. Yesterday, we revealed that Scotland spends more on it than England and Wales.
Personal care is free for Scottish people over the age of 65, but next year funding will be extended to everyone following a campaign led by a Scottish widow, the footballer Frank Coppell. So how does it work in Scotland? Well, Lorna Gordon has been finding out for us.
Okay, Archie, when you're ready. 4 times a day, Archie Forgan has carers visit him at home.
Feel steady?
A stroke left him paralysed down one side, and he gets help with bathing, dressing, the preparation of food.
And they get used to you coming in, and you get to know each other.
I think I've been coming in for 6 years as well.
Yeah. You've known them for quite a while,
For much of the day, Archie's care falls to his wife Mavis. But because he's over 65, the 2.5 hours or so of personal care he's been assessed as needing daily by his local authority is provided for free.
It makes a huge difference, honestly. Don't know what we would do, you know, without this care, Archie? No. To me, they're just like angels, really. He's getting emotional about it, that's what it is. Because he knows how lucky we are to have them all.
Free personal care was introduced in Scotland to try and encourage people like Archie to stay and receive care in their own homes for as long as possible. More than 45,000 people here are now assessed as being eligible. That's an increase of 8% over the last decade. It now costs nearly £380 million annually. The policy is well liked, but some say it could work better.
Well, people would like it to extend further into mopping and shopping type services, and there are some complaints that people may wait for the assessment for the service or delivery of the service. We estimate that if you were to introduce the Scottish system into England, for example, it would cost about an extra £7 billion by 2021.
He's got to have a support, and he does, from Frank Coppell. Oh.
Footballer Frank Coppell died from early onset dementia just weeks after turning 65. His wife Amanda successfully campaigned so free personal care would be available to all, regardless of age. She's still pushing to make sure the thousands of younger people who will be eligible from April will benefit not just in principle, but also in practice.
He said, tell them, Amanda, it's too late for me, but it's going to help others in the future.
Help people like Jeff Adamson. He became paralysed when he was 41. He welcomes Frank's law, but is worried it won't be fully funded.
It makes me very angry for myself, but for other people. I've no idea how it's going to be implemented, therefore. I'm concerned that I won't see any benefit whatsoever when this policy is introduced.
Free personal care in Scotland is provided as a legal right. The challenge to ensure this popular policy remains durable when it comes to cost and works as intended. Lorna Gordon, BBC News.
Now, the Scottish Government says the extension of free personal care is to be fully implemented on April the 1st, 2019, and has taken the necessary steps in the Scottish Parliament to make that happen.
And we'll have more on our care series for you tomorrow. And if you want to find out how much is spent on care of the over 65s in your area, wherever you're living, then we've created a very handy online tool which you can find on the BBC website.
And people have been in touch. They've done that this morning. We'd love to hear what you think. Jo has done it, says, and shown where her mum is, though, now that she's had to pay for carers 4 times a day. Needs to be in a care home where they have the right training and equipment now. Great, she says, but it takes up all of her pension. Still, she's warm, fed, looked after, has company and seems happy.
And so many people are sharing sort of sad stories with us this morning as well. Andrew says, it's so sad, my mum is 87 and getting some help, home help 6 weeks. They think she can cope, so she washed their hands of us, call us, she needs us. So there's all sorts of strange letters appearing in here. My sister and I feel we could do a better job. The council simply don't care.
Andrew Carrington puts it quite clearly after doing that calculator. I dread getting old. Time now is 26 minutes past 7. The Brexit tour continues today. Victoria is in Stirling and talking about the impact of leaving the EU. And Victoria, of course, whether that would stir up the debate again for Scottish independence. Morning.
Good morning to you. That is, of course, the lingering question. I'm here to have a look at what Brexit really means for people living 400 miles away from Westminster. Stirling, of course, is a city of huge strategic importance for Scotland. It has been for a very long time. It's been the scene of battles and really important strategic wins for the Scots over England in the past. But how does this latest battle over Brexit really look like it's shaking down? And where does it leave the longer-running fight for independence? Well, for companies looking to grow who are joining me this morning, of course Brexit matters hugely and the clock is very much ticking. For a city where 2 in 3 people voted to remain 2.5 years ago, where does a Conservative MP who backs Brexit and backs Theresa May's plan for Brexit really leave them? Will it reflect their priorities? I'm going to be talking to them about the possibilities for their profit and for their people in about half an hour's time. But first, the news, travel and weather, where you are.
Good morning from BBC London News. I'm Tolu Adeoye. London councils are warning of another year of austerity and cuts ahead of the government revealing what they can spend later this week. Labour councillors say vital services are at risk and are appealing for money. In Camden, the council says it faces cuts of £23 million next year, which could affect nursery places and transport services.
This has to stop. Austerity has not ended. In fact, it's getting worse. And what you're cutting when you're cutting local government is you're cutting children's services, you're cutting youth services, you're cutting amazing facilities like this. And we have to have a real conversation about how we fund these local services, because we can't go on as we are.
The family of a man who died after what police called a vicious assault just before Christmas 2 years ago have made an appeal for those responsible to come forward. Carl O'Brien was attacked in a communal stairwell of flats at Farngold Way in Wallington. He's been described as a beloved family man who doted on his young granddaughter. Detectives have renewed a £20,000 reward for information. A plan for the UK's largest ever lung cancer screening project is being launched today in the capital. The study aims to detect lung cancer early amongst at-risk Londoners and help to develop a new blood test. UCLH hope to recruit 50,000 people aged between 50 and 77 to take part. OK, let's take a look at the travel situation now then. On the tubes, there are severe delays on the Hammersmith and City line. The Piccadilly line is part suspended between Rayners Lane and Uxbridge. That's because of a signal failure. Turning to the roads then, in Wembley, the North Circular is down to 1 lane southbound just before Ikea at Brentfield Road. That's following a house fire. There are queues on the approach. In Wimbledon, Hayden's Road is partially closed. North Road is also closed. That's for ongoing investigations after a man was shot by police there yesterday. And finally, Twyford Road is closed in Acton because of a hole in the road, so expect some delays there. Let's take a look at the weather then with Kate Kinsella.
Good morning. Well, it was a cold night last night, especially compared to the last few mild ones. Temperatures low enough for a little bit of frost out there, but it's a sunny start. The cloud, however, will increase as we head through the day. Now, there is a bit of high cloud out there, so the sunshine perhaps from time to time, a little bit hazy this morning, but it'll be through the afternoon that thicker cloud arrives from the west. But a cold day, or colder than it has been, some 6 or 7 degrees cooler than yesterday. It's 7 to 9 Celsius, the maximum temperature. The wind is light, at least through the day anyway. Now, overnight tonight, still rather cloudy. We'll see thicker cloud and outbreaks of rain arriving through the second part of the night, the early hours of tomorrow morning through to Wednesday itself. Now, the minimum temperature is going to be a little milder than last night, between 4 and 6 Celsius. So a rather damp, murky start tomorrow morning. Quite a mild start, though. We'll see further outbreaks of rain, but mild temperatures at least for the next couple of days.
I'm back with the latest from BBC London in half an hour. There's plenty more on our website and over on BBC Radio London. Now, though, it's back to Dan and Naga. Have a lovely morning. Bye-bye for now.
Good morning, just gone 7:30. You're watching Breakfast this morning with Naga and Dan.
Good morning. Here's a summary of the main stories from BBC News. Theresa May will make the case for her Brexit withdrawal deal to Parliament later, opening a 5-day debate on the issue.
But first, MPs will vote on whether her ministers are in contempt of Parliament for failing to provide full legal advice on the withdrawal agreement. The Speaker, John Bercow, said there was an arguable case that a contempt of Parliament had been committed.
The Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, should take some responsibility for the chaos around the introduction of new rail timetables earlier this year, according to a report by MPs. Mr Grayling has apologised for the disruption faced by hundreds of thousands of passengers on Northern and Govia Thameslink routes in May, but has said that he was given reassurance by train company bosses just days before. The Transport Select Committee says genuine change is now needed to restore trust in the railways. Well, earlier the group that represents rail operators in Britain said lessons had been learnt.
We need to look at the plumbing of the industry, how the architecture is working, because clearly it's not working for passengers. So we welcome this government review that's going to be carrying on for about a year, but we know that passengers can't wait for the results of that review, that we as an industry have to act to make sure that what happened in May doesn't happen again.
More than 4,000 children in England with special educational needs and disabilities were not given the support they needed at school last year. This is according to the Ofsted Chief Inspector. The regulator's annual report, which is published today, describes the failure as a national scandal. The Department for Education says it's working to improve standards with a new inspection framework.
The family of a British woman who vanished from outside a bar in Tenerife have arrived to help with the search for her. 28-year-old Amy Gerard, originally from Cleethorpes, was last seen outside an Irish bar called Molly Malone's in Puerto de la Cruz in the early hours of Friday morning. Spanish police have released a missing poster appealing for information about Miss Gerard.
The body of President George Bush Sr. is lying in state in Washington. This follows a ceremony attended by the Bush family and senior political figures, including the current president, Mr Trump. There'll be a state funeral for Mr Bush on Wednesday before he's then buried in Texas on Thursday.
Perhaps, like me, not like you, it's a bit early for the Christmas decorations to go up. What did you just do then?
I was just interested in you. We normally go sort of 14th of December, but because we've got a bit of a Christmas do this weekend, we're actually going a little bit earlier this week.
And I still think that's too early, but do what you want. It's up to you.
I'll ring to check that you're OK when I put them up next time.
I'll give you the yay or nay.
A
couple in Leicester didn't bother asking. They've covered their home in festive lights as part of a tradition that's been going for more than 30 years. This is the work of Fred and Eileen Toon.
I think it's nice, this. I think they put a lot of effort into it. They're 91, they're 86, and they save money from their pension each year to put on the display for their elderly neighbours.
Yes, and a lot of people, and how old are they? 90, 89 and 91?
So they're young at heart. They're putting on for the elderly in their area.
At 91.
Yeah. Very impressive.
Yeah, you old folk come round.
We've got 6 Christmas trees Sally Nugent with us as well.
Yeah, totally. My problem is I just keep buying decorations. I can't stop buying baubles, so I need more trees. That's what it is.
6, is it? I know you say 4 of them are quite small.
3 of them are those miniature, teeny, like literally teeny tiny, 3 little, like that big.
So do you have 1 whopper and then 2 medium-sized ones?
I have 1 real one, 1 fake one, and then 1 pink one.
And then 3 little ones.
And then 3 little ones. Because I can't stop buying baubles. I love Christmas.
Well, I can see that. I can see that addiction.
Do you know the best baubles I've seen? The only reason I would buy new baubles, the ones filled with alcohol. Have you seen those?
No. Does that exist?
Gin or whiskey baubles.
Oh, I also my throw any away. I get very sentimental about them.
Ones, right.
Yes. My angel is about 30 years old. Love it. Anyway, they're telling me to shut up about Christmas.
Yes,
Stop talking about the football.
They were telling you that about a minute and a half ago.
Morning, everybody. We're talking about the Ballon d'Or. And this lady here is Ada Hegerberg. She plays for Lyon. She's from Norway. She's the first female winner of the Ballon d'Or last night. She
Congratulations.
Says yeah, huge congratulations to her. She says it's the biggest moment in her life and historical. There was some controversy when the host, Martin Solveig, a famous DJ, asked her, when presenting the award, that's not him by the way, asked her if she could twerk.
Et on s'est dit qu'on allait faire un truc un peu comme ça. Est-ce que tu sais twerker?
No. He came to me after and he was really sad that it went that way. I didn't think about it in that moment. I didn't consider it as a sexual harassment or anything. I was just happy to get a dance and celebrate winning the Ballon d'Or, to be honest.
Well said. Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi have won the Ballon d'Or between them for the last 10 years, but their monopoly has been broken by Luka Modric. He guided Croatia to the World Cup final and helped Real Madrid win a 3rd successive Champions League. Ronaldo was 2nd, Messi down in 5th.
It's victory of football tonight, and I'm happy that I am the winner, but this award is for all these players as well that probably deserve to win and they didn't.
Messi and Ronaldo didn't go, they stayed at home. Meanwhile, Manchester City face being banned from the Champions League next season if they're found to have broken financial fair play rules. The champions are under investigation by UEFA after documents were apparently leaked showing they'd used sponsorship deals to get around regulations. We're waiting for news of a possible punishment. We have the shortlist for BBC Sports Personalities Sporting Moment of the Year. Shall we have a little look through? Start with the netball. Who could forget this moment? England's netballers winning gold at the Commonwealth Games in April. That was dramatic. That was great. It was. The commentary is brilliant on that as well. England's footballers finally winning a penalty shootout against Colombia at the World Cup. Dan cried. Alistair Cook making a century.
Not ashamed of it.
Yeah, not ashamed, no. Alistair Cook making a century against India in his final Test match. I cried.
Cheers.
Tiger Woods' incredible win at the Tour Championship. And a late edition. Tyson Fury dramatically rising back from what looked like a certain knockout in the 12th round of his fight with Deontay Wilder.
That's what that sounds.
Okay.
Didn't actually win it though, did he?
He didn't win it.
But
controversially.
Can you win a fight having been knocked down twice?
He can. I think he should have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the judges particularly.
I don't think we have time for this. Anyway, voting is now open. All the details you need are on the BBC Sport website. That's in a couple of weeks' time, a week on Sunday.
Thank you very much.
You're
Talking
welcome.
about Christmas before the sport, we're going to chat about it now, actually, because it may be the season of goodwill, but it appears a new tradition for Christmas adverts is it's all about sort of tugging on the heartstrings, isn't it? It's been around for a while.
Yeah, and the BBC has a new promotional film. This is no exception. It tells the story of a mother who's struggling to find time to spend with her son. It's certainly got some viewers talking. Here's what it looks like.
Living through the darkness, but soon I think I will be safe. Out there in the distance, you look like a North Star. Oh, somehow lead me to the next place. Hold me close when we let go of the shadows. That's when I'm lost in you.
You'll have seen that. I'm sure you'll see it in the build-up to Christmas as well. Let's meet the people behind the making of that film, Edward Usher and Rachel Roberts. Good morning to you both. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Should we deal with the controversy first of all? Because some people have been talking about the fact that it's guilting out working mums. You are a working mum yourself, are you not?
I am a busy working mum, that's right.
So how do you feel listening to some of those criticisms for that? It's not really an advert, is it? I suppose it tees up the BBC's Christmas offering.
Yeah, well, what I find is that I mean, everybody's busy at this time of year, and the message of this film is really about cherishing the time that you do have with the people that you love. So, and it chokes me up watching it as well, still. But yeah, so for me, the message isn't about, you know, whether it's a busy working mum. It's about connecting relationships in families and how important they are, and understanding that, you know, we need to cherish
What
those
was the
moments.
brief, Edward, in terms of when you were making this? Because I think the environment these are made in now, you've got John Lewis, you've got M&S, you've got all the big brands kind of putting out these adverts, their adverts for them, and they're things to be spoken about, aren't they? Water cooler moments, so to speak. What was the brief when you were given this?
Well, the brief was that we just wanted to bring people together around the television at Christmas time, and we wanted to show everybody what BBC One is about at Christmas. So we wanted to do that in a very creative way and tell a story, as BBC One has such a great storytelling tradition. We don't try and compare ourselves with those other brands because obviously we're not saying anything. So we just wanted to tell a really real, modern story about togetherness.
When you're researching something like this, because to go back to controversy, like, although, Rachel, you may not feel this has impacted you in that sense, there are people who are like, I don't want to be made to feel guilty. When you did the research for this, what did that involve to find out how people, to show whether this was something that people could relate to?
Well, when we did the research, my partners Andrew and I, who wrote the film together, we spoke to mums in the BBC and outside, did some research, and we were surprised actually at their response. We gave them the question, what would you do if you had all the time in the world? And we expected them to say, oh, we put our feet up, or we'd go watch a movie on our own, relax. But actually they said, oh, if we had all the time in the world, I want to spend some quality time with my kids and with my husband and with my family. And we were quite surprised by this. So we thought that's a great insight to write the film about. And the film is really about, if you get a moment, no matter how short, which is why we stopped time to imply only a moment is all it takes, really cherish time with your family. It's not about make more time, because we felt that would be disingenuous. We felt like it's about when you get a moment, just cherish it and live in the moment.
And it's a really long process, isn't it, Rachel, to come up with something like this? I mean, you can see the amount of effort and work that Edward's put into it. And it started, the thought process began back in March, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So Ed and Xander came up with this idea in March, and then we worked on developing the script, and then went through the process of engaging a director and commissioning a director to direct it. And we filmed it in Cromer in North Norfolk in September for 4 days. And then we've been working very hard since, putting it all together, and just finished it last week, just in time for turning on the Christmas lights.
Why does the BBC need this on? Why do we need a promotional video? Because people are going to be watching anyway, aren't they?
It's a good question.
I mean, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for everybody to rally around one piece of creative work. That's what the BBC is all about, is telling these beautiful stories, and it would be a shame to not do that at Christmas, which is a brilliant time for families and a wonderful time for BBC One.
I think also it's that time of year, isn't it, when people are waiting for various offerings from, from people like the BBC and, you mentioned John Lewis and those sorts of things. And you pit them against each other. I think it's become part of the Christmas tradition.
It is part of the Christmas tradition. Everyone talks about one thing, don't they? Edward, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to see you both.
I don't know if the weather is in a Christmassy mood
cold
at the
enough.
moment. Yeah, it's cold enough. It's wet. It's wet. Morning, Carol. You're not wet. Morning.
Thank you, Naga. Good morning. This morning it is a cold start to the day, though. For many of us, temperatures have fallen below freezing in parts of northern England, as low as -6 in North Yorkshire. Now, that does mean there's a widespread frost first thing, and the risk of ice on untreated surfaces, more especially in Scotland, where we've got some lying snow in some of the higher routes. And we still do have some wintry showers in the north and the west. Talking of such things, you can see where we have seen some snow showers as we've gone through the course of the night. Most of these are above about 250 metres or so, and will continue to be so through the course of today. We've got a ridge of high pressure across us, so things fairly quiet, but then first weather front comes our way later on, introducing some rain initially across the Isles of Scilly, then in across Cornwall and also the Channel Islands. So a crisp start to the day. Any mist and fog patches will lift quite rapidly, and then you'll find that through the day, as the system approaches, the cloud will start to build ahead of it, turning the sunshine hazy. At the other end of the country in the sunshine, especially in sheltered glens, we could well hang on to the frost for much of the day. So a cold day but a sunny one, cloud building across